Hi, welcome to this webinar about the Climate Program Office NOFO FY23 Climate Observations and Monitoring Competition, which is focused on precipitation-related datasets and analyses. I'm Ginny Sells. I'm the Program Manager for the Climate Observation and Monitoring Program, and I'll be giving the presentation today as well as managing this competition. And COM is the funding program for this competition. And I will let Clara Decker introduce herself.
Hi everyone, my name is Clara. I'll be supporting Ginny on this webinar today. I work as a communication specialist for the Earth System Science and Modeling Division within the Climate Program Office.
Okay, and I'll be turning off my camera throughout the presentation, but we'll turn it back on when we get to the audience question and answer section. Next slide. So today I'll spend about 20 to 25 minutes giving you an introduction to the Climate Observation and Monitoring Program, the competition this year, and general notice of funding opportunity information and general frequently asked questions that we get about the NOFO. Next slide. So the Climate Observations and Monitoring Program supports projects that utilize existing observations, and those can be NOAA observations or other publicly available observations, and increase the use and value of those observations. And so in the past, COM-funded research has furthered climate understanding and enhanced NOAA modeling and climate monitoring capabilities. And this is a map of principal investigators and their institutions from the last 5 years of funding. So you get a sense of the geographic diversity of projects. Next slide. Other examples of COM's recent competitive research portfolio include the topics listed here. Oceans and climate monitoring is a reoccurring topic for the program. The program shifted to narrower topics and focused on atmospheric boundary layer datasets to improve the representation boundary layer in models, and really called for collaborations between the observations and modeling community. The program also focused on multi-program competitions focused on explaining extremes and competitions that would bring information directly to users such as the resource management community through its competition with climate information for national marine sanctuaries. So now in FY23, the program's circling back to its narrower focus on a topic. So in FY20, atmospheric boundary layer, and FY23, precipitation-related datasets. Next slide. A few examples of outcomes from COM-funded projects are here. So projects across competitions develop datasets that are then used by the science community to inform process understanding, enhance the integration of observations and models, or 3, improve the quality and consistency of climate data sets that can then be used for assessments. So this first example developed a sudden stratospheric warming atlas, and that atlas has been used in multiple studies moving forward, and that is an example where the outcome of the COM-funded project enabled further research. The second example is the development of an upper ocean stratification data set. And again, this data set was then used to inform further awards that transitioned some of the knowledge gained in this project into improved hurricane intensity prediction. And in the third example, this was an analysis of existing data sets, not data set development. And so that targeted an uncertainty that was called out in an IPCC report. So these are just examples. COM projects are not limited to these, but I was hoping that by showing some outcomes of projects, you get a better sense of the types of projects that COM funds. Next slide. So what is COM focusing on this year? Why are you all here? So the COM program is focused on precipitation-related data sets and analysis. And I just want to highlight that interested applicants should review the COM competition information sheet. And I've taken a screenshot of the competition information sheet on the right, and we've dropped the link to the competition information sheet in the chat. So for applicants that haven't or are unfamiliar with NOAA Climate Program Office Notice of Funding Opportunity competitions, the competition information sheet is a separate document and outlines the priorities of the call. And I'll be going over the competition information sheet, but it is also available as a document for your own review. Next slide. So in the competition and the notice of funding opportunity, projects should target between 150K and 175K per year for 2 to 3 years. That's about the scope of successful COM funded projects. And the majority of projects COM funds is more in the 3-year range, especially for dataset development projects. Typically, applicants will propose to develop the data set in years 1 and 2, and then do some analyses or some pilot projects in year 3. So this year, the COM program is soliciting proposals that will again exploit NOAA and other federal or publicly available existing surface, atmosphere, precipitation, and other related observation-based data. And again, observation-based data here is a broad definition that includes in situ, remote sensing, and even paleoproxy data. And the call is soliciting proposals that will advance NOAA's precipitation prediction grand strategy and fill knowledge gaps that were highlighted in a recent workshop run by NOAA and the Department of Energy, Precipitation Processes and Predictability. And I've highlighted both of these reports that are publicly available on the right. Next slide. The collection of new observations and instrumentation is not eligible under this funding announcement. So if you want to put instruments out into the environment that is not eligible for funding, we're really looking for projects that are utilizing existing instrumentation that's already been funded and is out there collecting data or has already collected data. Next slide. This is more guidance that is called out in the competition information sheet for proposals. So we're looking for proposals that again have that strong observation-based data set or product development or analysis component. Studies can be global or regional. Both are eligible under this funding announcement. And I've provided some examples of data set development because I get a lot of questions about what that means. You can read through those in the competition information sheet. Again, the call is not limited to those examples, but those are examples based on frequently asked questions. Project outcomes should, again, improve the use of observations, in this case, precipitation monitoring, prediction, furthering predictability research, or precipitation-related decision support. And examples of that include resulting data sets. Outcomes from the project could be analyses and tools or products, could enable the design and further development of advancing modeling capabilities, enabling further hypothesis testing and process studies. And so the project itself doesn't necessarily need to do those hypothesis testing studies. However, it can make new data sets available that could further research areas that wouldn't have been possible before this data set development. And the last, again, example, these are examples. It's not limited to these examples. Enhance the use of data in future model initialization and evaluation. Next slide. So after providing this broader guidance in the competition information sheet, the competition information sheet then goes into detail on specific priority areas. And so we're really encouraging proposals to focus on one or more of these priority areas, and these have been pulled from the DOE workshop or the Precipitation Prediction Grand Challenge. You can hear my dog barking in the background, I apologize. So I'd encourage you, one, to read through this list and review the two reports that are listed in the competition information sheet. And a note here is that we're not looking for proposals that check every single box here. You can consider one of these and be just as relevant as a proposal that considers 3 of these. We're looking for good, solid proposals. And so please don't feel like you need to focus on every single one or even 2. We're really encouraging just 1 or more if that works for your proposal. Next slide. So now moving on to the notice of funding opportunity itself, and moving away from the program-specific competition information sheet. This is the timeline for the letters of intent as well as full proposals, and we'll go through each one. So letters of intent are due September 1st, and then you'll get a response back from the program September 29th or by September 29th. Full proposals are due November 21st at 5 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, and proposals need to be in by that time. That is a hard and fast deadline. We do not have the power, so to speak, to provide any flexibility there. So please submit your proposals early so that your own institution can do anything they need to get it in by November 21st. So that non-federal applicants will submit their applications through grants.gov, while federal applicants will email their applications to the competition manager. And if you have questions about that, please email me, and we'll go into multiple institutions and subawards later on in the presentation. And then the peer review process happens, and then applicants are notified of program decisions around between April and June, depending on the timing of congressional and agency appropriations. Next slide. Here I wanted to highlight the proposal review process that these proposals go through, because if you're a new applicant to NOAA, this is a different review process than you may be familiar with through other agencies, such as the National Science Foundation. So when proposals come in, programs may or may not send them out for mail review, and so that means that they're being reviewed individually by an expert reviewer. After that, the proposals will go on to the stage 1 panel, and that is a panel of scientific experts that can cover all of the proposals. Each proposal is reviewed by at least 3 of the panelists on the panel. If there were mail reviews, the mail reviews are given to the stage 1 panel. The mail review scores do not affect the final ranking. However, the qualitative assessment is provided as additional information for the panel. In the stage 1 panel, your proposal is reviewed based on scientific and technical merit, which is 75% of the total score. Which is 52% of the total score, sorry. So the scientific and technical merit panel, which is the stage 1 panel, is 75% of the total score. Within that, there are 3 criteria. The scientific and technical merit, which is 52% of the overall score, applicant qualifications, which is 15% of the overall score, and budget, which is 7.5% of the overall score. And then after your proposal has been scored by the stage 1 panel, it then moves on to the stage 2 panel, which is comprised of panelists that can judge the proposal on its relevance to NOAA. And here, the relevance criteria is defined as the intrinsic value in the proposed work and/or relevance to NOAA, federal, regional, state, tribal, or local activities. And additional considerations that go into that are the objectives that are listed in the proposal for the program, or in the NOFO for the program. So for this competition, that means COM. So utilizing existing observations and increasing their value is the program objective. The scientific program priorities in the competition information sheet that we went over earlier, the statement of diversity and inclusion described in the notice of funding opportunity, the PI's record of making his or her data accessible and usable by the scientific community, and the data information and sharing plan, which again is a component of the proposal. So the review process, I think, really highlights the importance of the letter of intent process, because that's when you get a better sense of the relevance of your concept to the program. And again, that's 25% of the total score. Next slide. So letters of intent, frequently asked questions. Again, letters of intent are due September 1st. They are not required, but they're highly encouraged. Competition managers reply to LOIs based on the relevance to the targeted competition, and you should receive a response by the end of September. And the notice of funding opportunity outlines all of the things that should be in a letter of intent. Again, here, it's important that the program manager can read and understand your LOI and assess its relevance to the competition. Next slide. These are some general frequently asked questions that we get about proposal content. And so the first is just who is eligible and how do I submit my proposal? So again, as I noted, non-federal and federal applicants are eligible to apply, and we even accept international applicants to the competition. How do I submit my application? If you're a non-federal applicant, you'll submit your application via grants.gov. If you are a federal applicant, and only if you are a federal applicant, you will email your application to the competition manager, in this instance, myself. And then how do we submit applications from multiple institutions for the same project? So we heavily discourage subawards, and you should be submitting identical applications from each institution that is requesting funding. And this is outlined in the notice of funding opportunity. Again, the applications are identical except for the budget. The budget should be specific to the institution that is submitting the proposal. Next slide. Another frequently asked question is, how long can my proposal be? So for proposals that have 1 or 2 PIs, the proposal can be 35 pages total. Proposals that have 3 or more PIs, the proposal can be 40 pages total, and each section has its own page limits, and those are broken down again in the notice of funding opportunity. So I encourage you to review those sections. Next slide. A few other questions we get often. Can results from prior research include non-NOAA funded projects? Yes, we are interested in your prior research. It does not need to be funded explicitly by NOAA. Another one, should my figures be embedded in the text or be at the end of my proposal? Either approach is allowed. However, the statement of work, including references, figures, and other visual materials, must not exceed 20 pages of text. So consider, if you were a reviewer, which approach would you prefer? And if you embed the figures, you're likely to also save some space. What should go in my diversity and inclusion statement? On page 14 of the notice of funding opportunity, we've included specific examples of things that you could include in that D&I statement. And then the last question is, can the applicant request federal salaries in the budget? In most cases, no. However, there are some exceptions, and so I would suggest following up with the competition information or the competition manager for the competition you're applying to, and in this case, that is me. Next slide. All right, so made it through in 20 minutes. So now we're kind of moving to question and answer section. This presentation is recorded and will be posted after the webinar is finished, and so you can review it at your own time. And I believe your identities are, I can see them, however, they're anonymous to the other participants and they won't be shared as part of the recording either. And so as we move into the Q&A, Clara will ask the questions as they arise in the chat, and I will do my best to answer them. And if I don't have an answer, I will contact you via email and follow up.
So we haven't gotten any questions coming in quite yet, but I'll give everyone just a moment to formulate those and enter them within the question box. It should be on your GoToWebinar panel, the question function. So Ginny, we have one question. What is the maximum length of the diversity statement?
That's a good question. I would have to look at the NOFO and see what it says. So I would say if it's not outlined in the NOFO, then it's up to your discretion. So some sections have page limits. So we just talked about the project narrative has a page limit. The data and information sharing plan has a page limit. It seems like the statement of diversity and inclusion does not have a page limit. And so you have some flexibility for the sections that don't have a page limit explicitly stated in the notice of funding opportunity to figure out how you want to manage your space with those sections. So I see results from prior research also has a page limit.
Okay, great. We don't have any other questions right now, but again, I'll give everyone just a moment. If you have any additional questions, to go ahead and put those in the question box.
And I'll add diversity and inclusion statements are typically like a solid half a page to a full page long, depending on how much information you would like to provide there.
Okay. Not sure if we have any other questions right now. None are coming up in the question box.
Hopefully that means that the presentation was informative and the frequently asked questions got everybody's questions. But if you do have questions after the webinar or things come up as you're composing your letter of intent, please feel free to email me. And if I can't answer your question via email, we can set up a time, like 15 minutes or so to chat.
Okay, one more question. You said this NOFO is for global and regional studies. Does this include urban areas?
Yes, I would encourage the applicant to submit an LOI and align it with the with one or more of the priorities that were listed in the slide. But the office has a history of funding urban projects.
Great. Another question. There was something about the PI's record of making their data accessible. How is that judged? Does it just matter what you have done in the past, or does it include your plan to make your data accessible for this grant?
Data accessibility for this grant would be reviewed under the data information and sharing plan. Data accessibility for past is kind of gleaned from the results from prior research. So in the results for prior research section, the language, like an excerpt of the language is, because NOAA believes it is important that data sets developed with its support should be shared with the scientific community, PIs should also indicate how and when they have made their data accessible and usable. So two parts to that. One is the results from prior research for past, and then for the current project that, or the proposed project that's in the data information sharing plan.
Another question, do we have to include an operational pathway for the data set? And is this preferred?
It depends. It depends on the project. So again, I would encourage you to submit an LOI. But the projects that we fund are, NOAA has a technical readiness scale. And so lower technical readiness projects are more in the research realm, and higher technical readiness projects are more like ready for operations. And so the program in the past has typically funded projects that are in the lower technical readiness levels in the kind of research realm. However, if kind of the point of the project is to create a data set that would go into operations, and that's the kind of user of that project, that might be a different conversation. And so if the goal is for the data set to be operational or continued past the award, there should be some discussion in the proposal about how realistic it would be for that to happen. Does that make sense? But we don't require transition plans. So I would say email me and let's talk further about that.
Great, we can wait another moment or two to see if any other questions come in.
So I think an example, I'll just give another example for the operational question. The hurricane intensity prediction example I gave, those PIs went on to get another grant and another program office that does focus on that R2O transition stage. And so while they were able to transition some of the outcomes of the project, that was still 2 to 5 years away and required more funding. And so that's kind of where I see COM playing the largest role, but that doesn't mean that there aren't other possibilities.
Great. Well, I don't see any other questions coming in right now, so I think that may be it.
Okay, no hard ones. Well, thanks everybody for joining the webinar for the COM competition that's focused on precipitation dataset development and analysis. And again, if you're watching this, as a potential applicant, please feel free to email me if you have any additional questions that weren't answered through this webinar.
Okay. Thank you.